Hollywood is a ruthless machine. It can lift you to the highest peak, and it can also push you into the deepest abyss. But not everyone who disappears does so because of a scandal. The term canceled is far too simple. The truth behind it is much more complicated. It could be a single tweet that destroys a career, a series of bad decisions, shocking lawsuits, or even a personal choice to step away from the spotlight. In this video, we'll dive deep into 10 complex stories of power, arrogance, and the price of fame. This is the real reason why Hollywood seems to have stopped calling the names of these top stars. If you're ready to uncover the hidden corners of Hollywood, hit like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about the star you're most curious about. Let's start with James Franco. For a long time, he wasn't just an actor, he was a brand. A true Renaissance man of Hollywood. He was the star of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, an Oscar nominee for 127 Hours, and the secret weapon behind a string of hit comedies alongside his close friend Seth Rogen. He wrote books, directed films, and even taught at prestigious universities. Franco seemed like a man who could do no wrong. But the cracks began to show. In 2014, leaked screenshots revealed that he had tried to flirt with a 17-year-old fan on Instagram, an incident seen as both strange and troubling. But the real explosion came 4 years later. In January 2018, James Franco won a Golden Globe for his role in The Disaster Artist. It should have been the peak of his comeback. Yet that very night, several women took to Twitter to accuse him of inappropriate behavior. A few days later, the Los Angeles Times published a shocking article featuring interviews with 5 women, many of them former students from Franco's acting school, accusing him of sexual misconduct and abuse of power. They described a learning environment where he allegedly pressured young actresses into nude and simulated sex scenes in ways that were unprofessional and exploitative. Franco denied the allegations, but the damage was done. He quickly withdrew from the public eye, and several of his projects were canceled. And perhaps the most devastating blow to his public image came when Seth Rogen, his creative partner and closest friend, publicly distanced himself. Rogen stated that he had no plans to work with Franco again. In 2021, Franco agreed to pay $2.2 million to settle a lawsuit filed by former students. His career in Hollywood wasn't banned by any official decree, it was frozen by toxicity. Studios, already risk-averse, wanted nothing to do with a name tied to lawsuits and scandal. Recently, he's begun taking small roles in international films, a far cry from the blockbuster status he once held. James Franco stands as a prime example that talent can take you to the top, but it's reputation and behavior that determine whether you stay there. For 6 seasons, Lea Michele was the undisputed star of Glee. She played Rachel Berry, a fiercely ambitious theater diva, extraordinarily talented, but notoriously self-centered and difficult. For years, rumors swirled that in real life, Lea wasn't all that different from her on-screen persona. Those whispers exploded into a full-blown public scandal in 2020. Amid the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, Lea posted a tweet in support of the cause. Almost immediately, Samantha Ware, a black co-star from the final season of Glee, responded. Ware accused Lea of making her life on set a living hell and said she would never forget the microaggressions she endured. That was the first shot fired. Soon after, a wave of other Glee cast members, including key players, began speaking out, liking negative posts and sharing their own stories. They painted a consistent picture of a toxic work environment where Lea Michele was said to have treated her colleagues, especially those with less power, with disdain and arrogance. The fallout was immediate. HelloFresh, a major sponsor, cut ties with her. Hollywood quietly turned its back. The image of a sweet Broadway darling shattered, replaced by that of a workplace bully. Leah issued a public apology, but many felt it fell short, shifting blame to her privilege rather than owning up to her behavior. However, her story took an unexpected turn. She wasn't canceled completely. In 2022, she landed the role of a lifetime Fanny Brice in the Broadway revival of Funny Girl, the very role her character Rachel Berry had always dreamed of playing. Despite the lingering controversy, critics praised her performance, calling it a powerful and redemptive comeback. She has proven that her talent is undeniable. But there's a big difference. Broadway and Hollywood are two very different worlds. While she's dominating the stage, the bright lights of major film and television studios remain cautious. They haven't banned her, they're simply watching. She knows it, and instead of being discouraged, she sees it as a chance to prove herself on every front. With persistence and a fierce personality, she's slowly bridging the gap between Broadway's spotlight and Hollywood's cameras. Elizabeth Berkley's story is one of Hollywood's most classic tragedies, a tale of sexism and double standards. In the early 1990s, she was Jessie Spano on Saved by the Bell, the smart, hard-working girl next door. When the show ended, like many young stars, she wanted to break free from her wholesome image. And she chose the boldest way possible, the lead role of Nomi Malone in Showgirls 1995. The film was directed by Paul Verhoeven and written by Joe Esterhaas, the duo behind the massive hit Basic Instinct. It was expected to be a sharp, intelligent, erotic thriller. Instead, it hit theaters with an NC-17 rating banning anyone under 17 and was deemed an absolute disaster. Critics didn't just dislike the film, they ridiculed it, and their harshest attacks were aimed at Berkley. Her performance pushed to extremes by the director was dismissed as over-the-top and absurd. Overnight, Elizabeth Berkley's film career was dead on arrival. She became the punchline of the entire industry. What's striking is that director Verhoeven and screenwriter Esterhaas, the two men behind the film, went on with their careers unscathed. But Berkley, the woman who took the risk, became the scapegoat. She wasn't punished for a lack of talent, but for daring to be part of a spectacular failure. Hollywood didn't ban her, it simply didn't know what to do with her. She was branded by that failure, her career tainted overnight. It took years for her to quietly rebuild, taking small television roles, CSI the L Word, and working on stage projects. Ironically, Showgirls would later become a cult classic celebrated precisely for its outrageousness. When Elizabeth Berkley reprised her role as Jessie Spano in the recent Saved by the Bell reboot, she was welcomed back like a queen. Time at last had been fair to her, but there's no denying that Hollywood treated her with brutal cruelty for decades. There's no clearer example of self-destruction with a single click than Roseanne Barr. For decades, Roseanne was the undisputed queen of American sitcoms. Her show, Roseanne 1988 to 1997, was a revolution, giving a genuine voice to the working class. She was famous for her sharp wit, blunt honesty, and fearless attitude. In 2018, ABC revived Roseanne with the original cast. It became an unbelievable hit, the most watched show on television. Roseanne was once again at the very top. Then, on an early morning in May 2018, she posted a tweet aimed at Valerie Jarrett, a former black advisor to President Obama. Roseanne made a so-called joke comparing Jarrett to a character from Planet of the Apes. The outrage was immediate and explosive. It wasn't seen as a joke gone wrong, it was condemned outright as racist. Just a few hours later, ABC made a shocking decision. They canceled Roseanne, their #1 show. In a statement, ABC's president said her comment was abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values. This was the closest thing to an actual ban. It wasn't driven by public pressure, it was a decisive business move from a major corporation. They simply couldn't continue working with her. To save hundreds of other jobs, ABC created a spin-off series. The Connors shifted focus to the rest of the family, with Roseanne's character written off as deceased. Roseanne tried to apologize, blaming the sleeping aid Ambien, but the bridge was already burned. She had crossed the ultimate line. She wasn't canceled by an online mob, she was fired by her own employer for an act that couldn't be defended. Since then, she's largely operated outside mainstream Hollywood, performing stand-up comedy for conservative audiences and appearing on alternative media platforms. Shia LaBeouf is an enigma. He's one of the most talented actors of his generation, starting out as a lovable Disney child star, then becoming the driving force behind blockbusters like Transformers and Indiana Jones. He had it all: talent, charisma, and the backing of Hollywood heavyweights like Steven Spielberg. But alongside his rising career came a string of increasingly erratic behaviors. He was arrested multiple times for public disturbances and got involved in several altercations. He was accused of plagiarism. He staged bizarre performance art projects, like wearing a paper bag over his head at a film premiere. For a while, Hollywood dismissed it all as the eccentricity of an artist. Everything changed in 2017 when he was arrested in Georgia. Body cam footage showed him unleashing a stream of racist and abusive remarks toward the officers. It was an ugly, indefensible moment. His career began to stall, but he found redemption in independent films, delivering critically acclaimed performances in Honey Boy, a semi-autobiographical film, and The Peanut Butter Falcon. It seemed like he was on his way back. Then came the second and biggest explosion. In December 2020, his ex-girlfriend musician FKA Twigs filed a lawsuit accusing Shia of sexual battery assault and systematic emotional abuse. The suit described disturbing, detailed accounts of his behavior. This was no longer eccentricity. These were serious criminal allegations. Hollywood withdrew immediately. Netflix removed his name from the promotional materials for Pieces of a Woman, even though he was the lead actor. Major studios, which had already seen him as a risk, now viewed him as an untouchable legal liability. At present, Shia LaBeouf's career remains in limbo. He has converted to Catholicism and spoken publicly about remorse and redemption. He still lands roles in projects by veteran directors like Francis Ford Coppola, people powerful enough to take the risk. But in mainstream Hollywood, he's not banned. He's become uninsurable. In an industry built on money and image, LaBeouf is simply too dangerous a gamble. Even so, he's never lost his creative drive. LaBeouf continues to pursue small, independent projects where he can express himself freely, unbound by Hollywood's expectations. If you agree that Shia LaBeouf deserves a second chance in Hollywood, leave a number 1 in the comments. But if you believe he threw away his own opportunities, comment a number 0 to share your thoughts. And who knows? Maybe one day that same determination and passion will help LaBeouf write one of Hollywood's greatest redemption stories. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to like, share, and hit that sub button to support the channel. Not every star who disappears was pushed out, some chose to walk away. And no one did it as decisively as Cameron Diaz. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Diaz was Hollywood's golden girl. From The Mask to There's Something About Mary, from Charlie's Angels to Shrek, she was one of the highest-paid, most beloved, and most bankable actresses on the planet. She embodied radiant beauty, infectious energy, and effortless humor. And then after the film Annie in 2014, she disappeared. No scandal. No official announcement. She simply stopped taking roles. For years, tabloids speculated endlessly, but the truth was far simpler, as she later explained. She had been working non-stop since she was 21, and she was exhausted. In an interview, she said that the relentless pace of Hollywood had prevented her from having a real life. She wanted peace and to take control of her own life. She married musician Benji Madden in 2015, welcomed their first child in 2019, and built a successful organic wine business called Aveline. Cameron Diaz is one of the rare A-list stars who retired at the peak of her fame and did so without regret. She chose family and mental well-being over red carpets and box office glory. Interestingly, after nearly a decade away, she announced her return in 2022, starring opposite Jamie Foxx in a Netflix film appropriately titled Back in Action. But this comeback is entirely on her own terms. She wasn't banned by Hollywood. Perhaps for a time, she was the one who banned Hollywood. She proved that there is life beyond fame, and that in itself is the ultimate power. She returned with a new mindset, no longer needing to please anyone or chase old expectations. That very freedom made her more captivating than ever, not only to audiences, but also to the filmmakers who once doubted her. Monique's story is one of the most complex and heartbreaking tales in Hollywood politics. She was a beloved comedian best known for The Parkers. Then, in 2009, she delivered the performance of a lifetime in Precious. Her portrayal was raw, terrifying, and unforgettable. She swept nearly every major award, culminating in an Oscar win for Best Supporting Actress. It should have been the beginning of a glorious film career. Instead, it marked the start of a freeze-out. After her Oscar win, Monique claimed that the calls stopped coming. She said she had been blackballed by the industry. The reason, according to her, it was because she refused to play the game. During the awards season for Precious, she declined to participate in unpaid promotional campaigns. She argued that she had fulfilled her contractual obligations and that her time had value. She was labeled as difficult and ungrateful. Director Lee Daniels, along with producers Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry, reportedly kept their distance. Monique's story raised a painful question. What does Hollywood really expect from its stars, especially women of color? She did what many male actors have done, demand fair compensation for her labor, yet she was branded as hard to work with. For years, Monique refused to stay silent. She spoke out against pay inequity, even publicly, calling out Netflix for offering her significantly less than her white or male counterparts. Critics accused her of sabotaging her own career, but to her supporters, she was simply a woman brave enough to tell the truth. In recent years, things have shifted. She publicly reconciled with Lee Daniels, who apologized to her. She went on to star in a Netflix special after settling her lawsuit with the company and began landing new roles again. Monique wasn't canceled over a scandal. She was sidelined for daring to demand her worth. Let's go back to the mid-2000s. Dane Cook was a phenomenon. He was the first comedian to truly harness the power of the internet, building a massive fan base on MySpace. He wasn't just performing in clubs, he was selling out arenas. He was a rock star of comedy. And as always, Hollywood tried to turn that popularity into box office gold. They cast him as the leading man in romantic comedies like Employee of the Month 2006 and Good Luck Chuck 2007. That was when the real trouble began. Those films, to put it mildly, were critical disasters. Good Luck Chuck was considered one of the worst movies of the decade. Audiences may have shown up, but critics loathed them, and Hollywood noticed. But an even bigger problem was simmering within the comedy community: accusations of joke theft. Several fellow comedians, including Louis C.K., who would later have scandals of his own, and Joe Rogan publicly accused Dane Cook of stealing their material. In the world of comedy, this was the ultimate sin. The combination of poorly received films and a tarnished reputation among fellow comedians killed his momentum. Hollywood didn't ban Dane Cook. They simply realized that his brand of comedy didn't translate well to film and that he carried too much controversy. He tried to pivot to dramatic roles, Mr. Brooks, but it was too late. The spotlight had faded. Dane Cook didn't disappear. He kept touring and maintained a loyal fan base. But the door to Hollywood's A-list slammed shut. Studios no longer saw him as a worthwhile investment. Still, Cook refused to fade into obscurity. He shifted his focus to independent projects and online platforms where he could control his content and connect directly with his devoted fans. If you only know Randy Quaid as Cousin Eddie from the National Lampoon's Vacation series, you might think of him merely as a comedic actor. But in truth, Randy Quaid was once a highly respected performer, an Oscar nominee for The Last Detail, 1973, and a star of major hits like Independence Day. Randy Quaid's downfall is one of the strangest and most tragic stories in Hollywood. It didn't begin with a scandal, but with a series of increasingly erratic behaviors and legal troubles. By the late 2000s, Randy and his wife Evie began running into trouble. They were arrested for allegedly failing to pay a hotel bill. Later, they were arrested again for squatting in a home they once owned, claiming it had been fraudulently sold to them. But things soon took a much stranger turn. The couple began making public claims about a dark Hollywood conspiracy they called the Star Whackers. They insisted that a secret group was targeting and killing celebrities, including their friends like Heath Ledger, and that they were next on the list. Believing their lives were in danger, they fled to Canada and sought asylum, a request that was ultimately denied. Meanwhile, back home, his career had completely collapsed. He was permanently banned from the Actors Equity Association after fellow cast members in a Seattle stage production accused him of abusive and disruptive behavior. Being banned from the union was in effect the final nail in the coffin for any serious stage or film career. Today, Randy Quaid occasionally posts bizarre political videos online. This isn't a story about cancel culture, it's a tragic story of legal troubles, mental health struggles, and conspiracy theories that rendered a once great actor completely unemployable. Now, the name Randy Quaid evokes chaos more than glory. From an Oscar-nominated star to a cautionary tale, he has become a symbol of how fame, pressure, and paranoia can destroy even the most gifted talents when left unchecked. This is an interesting case because the idea that Tobey Maguire disappeared is both true and false. Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man for an entire generation. Sam Raimi's trilogy helped define the modern superhero genre. He was a global superstar loved by audiences everywhere. But after Spider-Man 3, 2007, and the collapse of Spider-Man 4, Tobey Maguire's career seemed to slow down significantly. He starred in Brothers 2009 and The Great Gatsby 2013, but he was no longer the top-tier movie star he once was. So, what happened? Was he banned? No, but there were rumors. The most persistent one was that Tobey Maguire was difficult to work with, not in a loud or explosive way, but in a quiet, tense, and demanding manner. It was even reported that he was nearly fired from Spider-Man 2 due to back problems and scheduling disputes. On top of that, he was caught up in Hollywood's infamous illegal poker scandal, the very one depicted in the book, and later the film Molly's Game. In it, he's portrayed as a skilled player but also a sore winner and notoriously stingy, not exactly a flattering image. However, the real reason for Tobey's disappearance may be far simpler. He's an introvert. He never cared much for fame. And most importantly, he shifted his focus toward producing rather than being in front of the camera. He founded his own production company and worked behind the scenes on several successful films. And of course, the entire disappearance theory was blown away in 2021 when he made a spectacular return in Spider-Man: No Way Home. His appearance sparked cheers in theaters around the world. It was a powerful reminder that Hollywood never banned him. He was simply waiting for the right moment on his own terms. A career in Hollywood is like walking a tightrope. It takes talent, luck, timing, and perhaps most importantly, the ability to maintain relationships and a spotless public image. These stories serve as cautionary tales of what happens when even one of those elements falls apart. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new video. See you in the next one.